What's good, everybody? In this video, we're going to be looking at graphs and how to interpret the data on the ACT and SAT. If you find this video helpful, give us a like. So problem number one is talking about the trajectory of a ball. And the most important thing we need to understand is that even though the x-axis doesn't say feet, we know that that's the unit of measure they're talking about, and they're asking us about the domain. So if you think that the domain is measured on the y-axis, you're going to go up here and say, hey, the highest point on this graph is 60, so 60 feet must be my answer. But that is wrong. They're talking about, hey, what x values are included in this domain? And when we look at this, we start off at 0, right? So the ball hasn't been hit, hasn't traveled anywhere. 0 feet will be in that domain. Then we look at 60 feet. The ball is still traveling, right? It's in the air, right? Now, the last aspect that becomes challenging is 200 or 220 feet. And a lot of students are going to pick 220 feet because they misinterpreted the graph. So if you fill this in, they try to make it seem, let's switch colors. They try to make it seem like the graph is going by 40s, but it's actually going by 20s. So if you fill these extra numbers in, you'll notice that the last number should actually be 200 feet and not 220. So just make sure you pay attention to how the graph is scaled so that you could get the domain right, and domain always refers to the x-axis. Problem number two, guys, we're dealing with a cannonball being shot from a cliff. And they give us the function h of t is equal to negative 5t squared plus 15t plus 8. And we know that t represents seconds in time, and h of t, our answer, is the height in meters. So question one says the cannon is 8 meters above the water. Well, in the question, they tell us that the height in meters above the water is given by this equation. So if we plug in 0 for the time, we would get 8 for the height in meters. So all you guys have to do is plug in 0. And once we do, we're going to notice that at 0 seconds, the height of the cannonball is going to be 8 meters. So question number one would be true. Now, when we go to question number two, it says the cannonball reaches its maximum height at 1.5 seconds after it is shot. So, for us to simplify or figure this out, we're going to have to use the vertex formula of a parabola. And that vertex formula is x is equal to the opposite of b divided by 2a, right? That's going to give us the x coordinate for this high point. So we know x is equal to negative 15, opposite of b, divided by 2 times negative 5. So x is equal to negative 15 over negative 10, which is x is equal to 15 over 10. And we could simplify this to 3 over 2. Now, 3 over 2 as a decimal is just 1.5. Okay? So this would also be true. So at 1.5 seconds, right, when we plug 1.5 in for t, the ball is going to reach its highest point. And if we wanted to figure out exactly what that highest point is, we would take 1.5 and we will plug it in for t, and then whatever our answer is, that's going to be the y for the highest point. In the next problem, guys, they give us a Venn diagram, and they're asking us to, number one, determine what percentage was spent on insurance and taxes, and how much more money was spent on that category compared to clothing. So the first thing we have to do is add up all the other percentages, and we're going to get 85. So if we spent 85% on everything else, that means we had 15% left over to spend on insurance and taxes. Now, to figure out the difference in how much we spent on between these categories, we're going to have to find out how much we spent on each. So for insurance and taxes, we know we spent 40,000, and if we multiply that by 15%, that's going to give us $6,000. And if I go back and repeat the process with clothing, out of 40,000, I spend 11% on clothing. That's going to be 4,400. And when I go now to figure out the difference in what I spent on the two categories, I'm going to get 1,600. And that's going to give us letter choice A. Now, in the second half of this problem, it says to us, what is the degree measure of the central angle of the sector representing insurance and taxes? So it's a complicated question, but it's very simple. So we know this is a circle. Circles have 360 degrees. So we're going to take 15% and multiply it by 360 so that we will be able to figure out the central angle of the sector, right? So 360 times 15%, and let's do that real quick, is going to give us 54. So if we're trying to figure out what is the degree measure of the central angle of this sector for insurance and taxes, right? This angle right here, we know that it's going to be 54 degrees, which should be letter choice B. Next problem, guys, we're dealing with juniors and their SAT scores. So the first part of this example asks us how many juniors at Central High took the SAT. So all we have to do is add all of this up, guys, but it's important that we make sure we get the correct numbers. So we have 50 plus 100 plus 400 plus 350 plus 150 and then plus 50. And if I'm not mistaken, when we punch all of this into the calculator, let's punch it in real quick. Okay. We're going to get an answer of 1,100 students, which is going to be letter choice B. So that's how we would answer the first part of this question. Now it says to us in the second question, it says, hey, what percentage of juniors had critical reading scores less than 600? So all we're going to do is go right here and add our scores from 200 to 590. And once we do, let's see what we get. We're going to get 750, 850. I think that should be 900. All right. So now we have nine. Oops. Looks like my marker's gone, guys. Sorry. So what we have now is 900 students with a score of less than 600 out of 1,100 students. And once we simplify this answer now, we are going to get 81.83% if you round up. Now, when we look at our answer choices, we know it's not E, D, or is it going to be A? The only answer choice that we could have, guys, is going to be C. So just please make sure you guys go ahead and divide those fractions. Just pay attention to the exact fractions, all right? Because you can't make a mistake picking the correct answer. All right. So now, last question of the day, it asks us how many juniors had a critical reading score or SAT score between 450 and 550. So when we look at these two categories, guys, we know that we cannot determine this information because the way that the data is collected or it's presented, the scores are from 400 to 490. There's no way for us to determine who had what score, who fell in the 450 range and the 550 range, because this measures wider than that. So just please be careful with these type of questions. They're here to trick you. Last problem of the day, guys. And if you enjoyed this video so far, smash the like button for us. So they're asking us to identify the degree of angle Y. But before we could do that, let's add in some key information. So we have angle A, angle B. So what we need to know is that angle A and x plus 5 are congruent. And that is important because when we have consecutive interior angles, such as 3x plus 15 in A, that is supposed to be equal to 180. And I'm going to use that to figure out what exactly is my x. Okay? So let's do that right now. All right. So we have x plus 5 plus 3x plus 15 is equal to 180. When we simplify, we'll get 4x plus 20 is equal to 180. We'll get 4x is equal to 160. When we divide by 4, x is equal to 40. So what does that mean now? That means that this angle is 45 degrees, and the vertical angle A from this is also going to be 45 degrees. And once I plug in 40 for x here, let's just make sure we get this right. So we have 3 times 40 plus 15. We're going to get 135 degrees for this angle here. So when I add 135 and 45, that is going to give me the angle, 180 degrees. So we're good on this side so far. Now we're going to focus on this side. And the same thing is with angle B and 2x plus 30. They are consecutive interior angles. So when we add those two, they're going to give us 180 as well. All right, let's put the calculator down for a quick second. All right, so when we go back now, we have B plus 2x plus 30 is equal to 180. All right. So now what we're going to get, let me make sure that I did this right. All right. So when we look at angle B and 2x plus 30, guys, we're going to do B plus 2 times 40 plus 30 is equal to 180. We already know that x is equal to 40, and when we add these two angles, we know they're going to equal to 180. So B plus, let's see, 80 and 30, 110 is equal to 180. So now we know that angle B is equal to 70 degrees. So angle B is equal to 70 degrees. We know this angle is 110 degrees. And now we're going to be able to determine what angle Y is. So B is 70 degrees, its vertical angle is 70 degrees. And now if we want to find Y, remember that adjacent angles, right, they're going to equal to 180 degrees. So when I add A, Y, and B, we'll get 180. So to figure out what Y is, we're going to do 180 minus 70 minus 45. And once we do, I believe our answer for Y is going to be 65 degrees. And that will be our final answer. Hopefully this video was helpful for you guys. If it was, smash the like button for us, subscribe to the channel, and leave any comments on future videos you'd like to see on our channel, or if you had questions from today's video. Thank you guys so much for joining Algebra 1 with Mr. Peters.